I'm Francesca Maxime.
And I'm Matt McClure, and this is Currents.
Some intrepid retired priests visit the USS Intrepid and remember.
Every day, every hour, every minute, somebody is protecting our rights, our freedoms.
Plus, we'll hear all about the remarkable life and work of a military chaplain.
And why Staten Island's grunt padre could one day be a saint.
We come together to remind people of what he did. The whole concept behind the service is a spirit of self-sacrifice.
Good evening and welcome. It is all about service. The words of Catholic priests describing both the priesthood and the military. Sometimes the two vocations are in fact intertwined. And tonight in a special edition of Currents, we're going to look at soldiers on two battlefields, fighting for their country and fighting for their faith.
And we begin with a recent visit by several senior priests to the USS Intrepid, which now serves as a museum on the west side of Manhattan. The trip brought back a flood of memories for some of the men, memories of what it means to serve in the church and to serve on the front lines.
There's a war going on out there, and nobody wants it. Nobody asks for it. But whether we want it or not, there every day, every hour, every minute, somebody from this area, especially, is protecting our rights, our freedoms.
This helicopter, when I was on board the ship, was used for rescue and utility. If one of these aircraft should unfortunately have to ditch in the water, it was our job as Navy swimmers to go and rescue the pilot. That was our primary function. If the pilot was mobile, he would get into it and bring it up and there was no problem. But if he was immobile, then it was our job to jump in the water, go down and get him. That was the risky part of the job. We have a pretty good record. I think there were a couple that we didn't get, and it was because they weren't retrievable, let me put it that way. They weren't rescuable. We also were the mailmen. Mail to any guy. Just keeps his morale up, just knowing he's got something from mom and dad or his girlfriend or his brother or whatever it is. I just felt good about it, I say, hey, yeah, I was the instrument in getting this letter from your girlfriend here.
We ask so much of our veterans. It seems a shame that some units, especially in the Marines, are called to go back again and again between Iraq and Afghanistan. And the human body, the human psyche can only take so much. The hundreds and even thousands of people we see on the street, many of them are veterans. And somehow they come back after 1 or 2 or 3 tours of duty, and somehow they fall through the cracks. We say the government, well, I think the government begins with us. We have to make enough noise to say something more has to be done.
Service to the country, service to God, one and the same to me. It's all tied in. Service. It's all about service.
And I think in a similar way, clergy, both the priests in Brooklyn and elsewhere, do the same thing. They dedicate their lives to a wonderful cause.
I saw some wonderful chaplains while I was in the U.S. Army, and I saw their dedication and how they treated people and, in fact, volunteered themselves 3 and 4 times. They were always going into the thick of things. They were the ones going with the soldiers into Vietnam. And that inspired me to follow in their steps.
Like everything in life, life is a struggle, and we're in the middle of a struggle.
Protecting this country is the main job. Ronald Reagan said, to have liberty, you need a strong defense. We have saved more countries and people in this world than any other country ever in the history of the world.
We'll recover. We're Americans. We're all about recovering. We're about renewal, looking forward, learning from our mistakes, and going on.
The country should be so proud to have these people protecting our freedoms out there in the front line.
I'm sure they're like we were, but even more so. They were probably counting the days and the weeks and the months, how soon they're going to get back to their families.
It makes me feel proud to be an American to see these young people today.
We're extraordinarily proud of you, and we miss you, and we pray for you.
Thank you for what you're doing, and keep your head low and be safe.
I'll take care of your families and your neighbors and the neighborhood while you're gone. But you're never out of my thoughts, and I really just want to say thank you. God bless you.
Well, really some powerful testimony there about what it means to serve.
Well, stay with us. There's much more current straight ahead on this special edition. When we come back, a military chaplain shares his experiences.
And we'll hear the incredible story of a soldier blinded by a suicide bomber and how he's learned to forgive his attacker. That and more straight ahead. But first, what does it mean to be a veteran? We asked that question at a Wounded Warrior Project fundraiser in Bay Ridge. Throughout the show, we'll be hearing some of what we heard. Take a look.
To be a veteran in the United States Army, it's something that I hold near and dear to my heart.
It's no other greater sacrifice, I believe, to give back to your country than serving in the military.
I've been serving for 9 years now, protecting our country, and being able to go ahead and endure freedom is something that, I think everyone should do.
Fighting for the country, representing the United States Marine Corps, coming home, being acknowledged by your fellow citizens, it's a special feeling.
You learn a lot about being a veteran out there.
You represented this country, so you feel more of an attachment to it and its people, and it's just a great feeling.
It's like something that goes beyond tradition. It holds you like a part of being a band of brothers. It's something that I can look back and think about those people that have died in many different wars before, and those that have served as well. It's something that we share together, and it's close to my heart as well.
Welcome back. Well, we've just heard some veterans describe their thoughts and their experiences, and now we're going to hear from someone who brings a unique spiritual perspective, a military chaplain. Joining us now is Father Gerald Murray. He was a Naval Reserve chaplain from 1994 to 2005, serving mostly in Italy. He now serves here at home, where he's the pastor of St. Vincent de Paul Parish in the Archdiocese of New York. Welcome, Father Murray. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Francesca. Good to be here.
Thank you. And tell me first maybe why you decided to become a military chaplain.
Well, I had thought about it when I was in the seminary, and then I was inspired by one of my priest friends who was in the Naval Reserve. So after I'd been a priest about 10 years, I then applied to the Naval Reserve and was accepted. And my hope was to be able to serve as a reservist and also be ready for active duty if I got called up.
I see. Okay, so that dual role, that dual interest. Tell us then how that experience of being the military chaplain affected your work today as a pastor in a parish.
Well, it was very interesting. I learned in the military chaplaincy the importance of asking people what they're interested in, because in the military chaplaincy you go around, visit the sailors and Marines at their posts, and you can't just start talking about religion, so you have to talk about them. So the typical chaplain advice is ask people what they do, and that'll lead to a conversation about who they are and what they're interested in.
Okay. And so that affects the way that you approach how you reach out to your parishioners now.
Yes, I'm more conscious when I meet people to try and get them to tell me more about what they do as a way of getting to know them. And it sounds basic, but often as a priest we just assume, well, this person is here to ask me to pray for them or for something like that, whereas it's good to let people express themselves and then go from there.
Yeah, I find that in life as well. And I mean, I'm far from your role, but still in general, it's sort of an effective tool. What are some of the special challenges that you've seen or had as being a priest to men and to women who are in war or at war?
Well, it's an environment with both a lot of stress, but on the other hand, a lot of idealism and optimism and love of country. And my experience, particularly with Marines, I was working with them both in Naples, Italy, and here in Garden City, Long Island, is that they are very serious people about what they're doing, and in general, Marines are very respectful of religion, and had many good experiences talking to Marines.
Then, with those good experiences, how do you reconcile being in the midst of war with ministering, I'm assuming, oftentimes peace, a peaceful message?
Well, you know, somebody once asked me, "Are you out there blessing the cannons?" You know, and the answer is no, of course not. We do pray for victory over enemies who are threatening us, certainly, but the goal of the military chaplain is to help those who are facing death in battle to be ready, to console those who lose members, service members are killed, and to console the grieving family members. And just to remind people, because remember, most military service members are young people. They're, you know, enter 18. And, you know, on an aircraft carrier, the oldest person on board is the captain usually, and he's maybe in his, you know, middle 40s or 50 years old. So it's to bring that reminder of the faith that they learned at home that is present with them in their assignment as a, you know, as a member of the service.
And was that some of the hardest parts then, is talking to people as they're nearing the end of their lives, especially when they are so young?
Well, I didn't have too much experience. When I was in the active war was in Bosnia, which was not very much of ground campaign. So there were certainly American casualties, but I didn't have the occasion to see people in that situation. But I did I have spoken to grieving family members on other occasions. That is difficult. It's also difficult in the military. Sometimes people have expectations that aren't met, and they run into difficulties and crises. Counseling is a big part of the military chaplain's duties, and that can be difficult, but like any parish priest, you try and learn through experience.
Was that so then what was, do you think, the hardest and then the most fulfilling parts about your role in that job?
Well, I'll say something I probably shouldn't say, but the bureaucracy in the military is probably the hardest thing. As a parish priest, you're used to doing things and you're in charge, whereas in the military, there's a little bit of bureaucracy you have to go through. That's understandable. It's, you know, millions of people are in the Department of Defense across the world, so things aren't as smooth. So I did have a few bureaucratic snags, but whenever I was on duty and serving, I'd have to say they're very happy to see the chaplain. The commander officers relies on the chaplain, and the chaplain does a great service, which is not always seen, but is certainly appreciated.
Sure, and felt. Any particular standout stories that people shared with you over the years?
Well, an experience I enjoy was taking Marines out to Pennsylvania for field training and then saying Mass on top of some ammunition boxes.
Oh, boy.
And, you know, when you're out there doing a weekend training with the Marines, they are moving at, you know, 100 miles an hour and going this way and that. But when some of the enlisted men and the officers found out I was going to say Mass, they came over. And that was a beautiful experience. It kind of reminded me of what wartime chaplains do on the front line. Go to where the men are, celebrate the Mass, distribute communion, and you know, remind them that this life is a preparation for the next, and they're very aware of that.
Well, Father Murray, thank you so much for being with us today. We really appreciate your insight and your experience.
Thank you, Francesca.
And we'll be back in just a moment.
Welcome back. I'm Matt McClure.
And I'm Francesca Maxime. Well, as you can imagine, the healing process for those who have been scarred by war can often be long and arduous. Consider the case of Captain Scott Smiley. In 2005, he was seriously wounded by a suicide bomber in Iraq. That attack left this husband and father of two blind.
He is now the Army's first ever active duty blind officer. But his story of resilience, faith, and forgiveness really is remarkable, as I found out when I spoke with Captain Smiley just recently. Well, Scotty Smiley, Captain in the U.S. Army, thank you so much for taking some time to be with us today here on Currents. We appreciate it.
No, thank you for having me.
Well, I understand that this your life kind of changed a little bit in 2005. Tell me about that. I understand that you actually were supposed to leave Iraq before this happened, but you ended up staying about a month longer than you had originally planned?
Correct, Matt. I was infantry soldier posted at Fort Lewis, Washington, and was deployed to Mosul, Iraq. And in April of 2005, our unit was coming over under heavy contact. And on April 5th, one of our companies was hit by a suicide car bomb, and a soldier was severely injured. And on April 6th, like you said, I was actually scheduled to go on my rest and relaxation period on April 2nd, but I was let known on March 31st, so I only had a couple days to let my wife know and prepare everything, so I decided to hold off and actually leave on April 22nd, almost a month later, to where it could give me some more time to prep and prepare everything. And on April 6th, as I was out in the city with my company commander, we had intelligence on the ground that the terrorists were trying to set up some type of ambush. And as I was traveling on the rural roads, trying to stay off the large highways and interstates in Iraq, in Mosul, I actually came upon a vehicle which was somewhat suspicious. And as I realized the rules of engagement and who we're supposed to shoot and when we're supposed to shoot,
right.
None of those came into play. And so I yelled at the man to get out of his car. No one was around him. I think everyone knew kind of he was a danger or a threat, and he began pulling a little away from me. So I shot around by his vehicle just to let him know I'm talking to him, and he stopped his car and stared at me and raised his hands up like nothing was wrong. And then he began pulling away. I shot one more round, and then everything in my life went black.
Wow. What's the first thing that you remember happening after that?
The first thing I consciously remember happening was my father giving me a kiss goodbye after he had been with me a week in the Walter Reed Army Medical Center, the hospital in Washington, D.C. So during that time, about a week and a half to 2 weeks had passed, and during that time, I had first aid applied to me directly after the suicide car bomb blew up, and then was flown down to Balad, Iraq, where I underwent massive surgery. Was then flown to Germany and then to Walter Reed, where my wife, Tiffany, met me and prayed with me and was there by my side along with my parents and my brothers and sisters.
Right. Well, and then, of course, obviously the doctors were telling you that you weren't going to be able to see again. What was your initial reaction, and how did that maybe change after you kind of received that news?
Well, I really had I really had a love for the Army and what we were doing overseas, and obviously when you've had such a devastating injury occur, at the time I was completely blind. There was still hope for my right eye as they hadn't done surgery, but then after 2 weeks after the injury, they did surgery, and the doctor came in and let me know that there was nothing that they could have done, and I would be blind the rest of my life. I really started questioning the Army, what I did over there, and then who I was as a person, and unfortunately kind of went into depression and really questioned not only what I was doing and why I did it, but questioned God. And it was really sad, now that I looking back at my life, it was sad to see me go through it, but at the same time it's something that many soldiers have to go through on a daily basis, just questioning what they're doing and why they've done what they've done. And in the end, it was my wife's love, my family's support, prayer, reading the Bible, friends coming in and playing songs that really allowed me to refocus back on God and understand what I did was the correct thing to do, and to still have faith in God, but then trust my wife, my family, and still continue to serve in the Army.
Right. Now, I was reading as I was preparing for this interview an article that said that you were inspired by the statement of St. Paul, "I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." And I find that interesting because obviously St. Paul, who before was Saul, was someone who was blinded as well, and there seems to be quite a parallel there.
There is, Matt, and it's amazing how St. Paul's words in the New Testament and how he came to that decision, and in questioning what his purpose is in this world is, and as I did that also, but understanding that that we're here to glorify God, and that's our sole purpose, and whether Paul knew it or not, and for myself, is without eyesight, there's still no reason I can't glorify and praise God and just thank Him for the love that He's given me. And Philippians 4:13 is actually inscribed in my West Point ring. Wow. And I graduated 6 years ago in 2003, and it's something that I always held dear to me. And as a result, it was something I questioned in the hospital. But again, God was always, is always there and stood by my side.
All right. Now I understand really quickly here you're working on a book.
I am.
Tell me a little about that.
It's a good friend of mine, Doug Crandall, and I are writing kind of a memoir about my life. It's an exciting, inspirational, riveting book, and the title is Hope Unseen. It's an amazing story about my life, and kind of goes through a lot of the things that we've talked about today. But it's just again shows that anyone can do all things through Christ who strengthens them.
Right. Well, very good. Well, Captain Scott Smiley, thank you so much for being here, and for being here on the phone anyway, and for sharing your story with us. It truly is amazing. All the best, sir, to you and to your family as well, and God bless.
Thanks, Matt. You too. God bless.
Captain Scott Smiley, and one thing that I didn't get to discuss with him there was that he actually went back to school after his injury. And this is kind of where the I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me thing comes from, that he was able, with the help of his wife and family, to get his MBA.
Wow.
So he went back to school, and it's an amazing thing.
Yeah, he obviously has a great determination, and what what great fortune that we are to have him still in service.
Absolutely.
And give all that he does. Well, stay with us in a moment. A look at a local priest and a soldier who just may be on his way to sainthood.
It means a lot to me because I feel like I'm a part of something that Americans appreciate, and I love that because I love America and I love the freedoms, and I hope that every other veteran feels the same way I do.
Others may consider it just a regular job. Me, I just consider it as something I wanted to do with inside of me, and look out for the other brothers that are with me on the battlefield, left and right.
With Veterans Day approaching, it's such an honorable feeling to know that I can stand behind that flag and stand up and listen to the national anthem be saying probably at any event that I go to.
That's what really it means to me to be a veteran, a person who showed their loyalty to their country.
Or stop by one of the Legion halls or the Veterans of Foreign Wars. Just see who's in there. Buy somebody a beer and just shake their hand and say, thank you.
We already heard from a Catholic chaplain in the military, but now we want to turn our attention to another priest who had the same assignment, but gave his life for it.
Vincent Capodanno was born and raised on Staten Island. He joined the Maryknoll Order, which does missionary work all around the world. Father Capodanno was eventually assigned as a chaplain for Marines in Vietnam, where he died administering last rites.
He's a servant of God. That's the first step in a journey that may lead to sainthood. This past September, around the anniversary of Father Capodanno's death, a special celebration was held in his hometown, and we were there to learn more about this saint in the city.
September 4th, 2009 marked the 42nd anniversary of the death of Marine Corps chaplain Father Vincent Capodanno. The attendance of the annual memorial celebration at Fort Wadsworth on Staten Island grows each year. Many recounted the story of his life and death, which had a clear effect on those who told it and those who listened.
The fighting was fierce, hand-to-hand at times, and the platoon was in danger of being overrun. Chaplain Capodanno went among the wounded and the dying, giving last rites and taking care of his Marines. Wounded once in the face and suffering other wounds that almost severed his hands, Chaplain Capodanno moved to help a wounded corpsman only yards away from an enemy machine gun. Chaplain Capodanno died taking care of one of his men. In 1971, Father Vincent Capodanno, Lieutenant, United States Navy Corps, received the Medal of Honor in recognition of his selfless sacrifice. In 2006, he was named a servant of God.
May we strive to improve our lives by offering to help improve the lives of our fellow men, regardless of race, religion, or culture. Then we will be continuing Father Vincent's life work.
Well, we come together to remind people of what he did. The whole concept behind the service is a spirit of self-sacrifice. And we ask people to remember that in a nation today where I think that maybe that concept has diminished, it's depreciated. I don't see that people today are nearly as willing as they were 40, 50 years ago to lay down their lives for a cause that's bigger than themselves. And Father Vincent is the embodiment of that. He intentionally, willingly laid down his life to protect his brother, to stand up for what he believed in.
I want to thank each and every one of you for taking of your time to come and honor my brother. He had the greatest love for his fellow man. The love and respect for your fellow man is not here anymore. Everything is with the dollar. The love for your fellow man has to come back. And maybe through Father Vincent, gradually it might come back.
Father Capodanno continues to touch people's lives as the cause to make him a saint moves forward.
Glorious feeling. It's a feeling you can't describe. But with all this, I wish he was here and nobody knew him.
And an interesting note, you'll see around the city there are parts of streets, or intersections named in honor of prominent people. Well, on Staten Island, Father Capodanno actually has an entire boulevard named after him.
Oh,
so
very well deserving.
Right, someone who definitely has had an effect on a lot of people.
Well, and the fact that he was willing to give up his own life for that of another as he was trying to comfort them, I mean, that's really sort of the epitome of service.
Right, absolutely. No greater love hath no man than he laid down his life for his friends. That's it right there.
Wow, you do that a lot better than I ever could. Go, Maddie, go. Well, that is all for this edition of Currents. Remember, you can always watch us online. Just go to currentsny.net. For all of us here, I'm Francesca Maxime.
And I'm Matt McClure. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great night.